No, I believe that both sides are trying to find common ground. Uh, I think the two issues, we know what the two issues are. One is lifting of the double blockade, and secondly is the nuclear issue. So I think the major questions which remain is one, if the blockade is removed, will Iran insist on some conditionalities? Whether there are any things attached to the lifting of the blockade on Hormuz and vice versa. And secondly, on the nuclear issue, whether the US will insist that the resumption of talks should be preceded by some kind of commitment from Iran on the nuclear issues. Because, of course, to resolve the nuclear issue and the sanctions issue will require further discussions, further in-depth negotiations. But it seems that the US is insisting that they should have some commitment from Iran even at this stage. So whether the Iranian offer includes something that is acceptable to the US, or if it doesn't include that, then that may be a problem. But these I see as the two outstanding issues that will have to be overcome. Yes, well, I would imagine that, um, obviously the Pentagon has all this planning about what are the next military steps that are possible for the US to take, and those are presented as options to the president. Uh, at the same time, I think it is not certain that these are presented as the best options. Uh, I think obviously the best option is an agreement between the two sides. But, these are presented as options. They are also advertised in order to exert pressure on the other side. So it's a dual function that has been now sort of portrayed, as a threat. But there are counter threats from the Iranians too. So I think we should see them for what they are, as partly posturing, public diplomacy. But the crucial thing is what is in the Iranian proposal and how the US reacts to those proposals. I think that's the first option. Well, I think they're both exerting pressure on each other, obviously. There is damage to the Iranian economy, no question that they are not able to export their oil. But Iran has long land borders, and it will probably be able to provide for its vital necessities. So I think on the other side, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, there's not much traffic going through the strait, and that is affecting the world economy. Some oil is being pumped by Saudi Arabia through its eastern pipeline and by UAE from its Fujairah pipeline. But still, there's still about 10% of oil supplies off the grid. And that's going to have impact on oil prices. And I think so. It's a Mexican standoff, shall we say? So I think both sides are exerting pressure, but both sides also, I think, see the value of reaching an agreement. Well, I think what the U.S. wants is fairly clear. They want Iran to stop enrichment, and they want Iran to somehow surrender the enriched uranium that they have. They have the 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, but there is others which is less enriched. But altogether, I believe that Iran has about 11 tons of enriched uranium at various stages of enrichment. So the question disposal of that material, the US is asking for it to be surrendered to itself, but it may agree to surrender to some of it being surrendered to a third party and some of it being down blended to 3%. Yes. Well, I think there is domestic opposition growing too because of the impact on the economy, gas prices, and general opposition to the fact that doesn't seem to be a strategy or objectives for this war, and the fact that the Israelis have dragged Mr. Trump into this war. This is the perception of many people. But I don't think that Mr. Trump will go to the Congress for approval. And I don't think that the Congress, there are the sufficient number of votes in the Congress to impose any restrictions on Mr. Trump's ability to pursue the war. I think he has the numbers to prevent that happening. So it's largely a question of what Mr. Trump and the administration decides with regard to the war, with regard to the negotiations. I don't think that there is a congressional role that is likely to put any meaningful constraint on the administration at this time. Well, obviously, there is a new configuration of power inside Tehran. But these centers of power, the IRGC, the clerical establishment, the civilian establishment, parliament, these are all centers of power which existed before.
Okay.
And they are just new personalities which are now representing these different centers of power. And the configuration of the power distribution may have changed between them, but they always operated by consensus and they continue to operate by consensus. So both the statements, the hard line statements that have now emanated from the Supreme Leader and the negotiating positions, I'm sure they are both being coordinated among the establishment. There is nobody, I think, is acting independently or can act independently in the Tehran hierarchy. It will reflect the consensus of the system. If there is a proposal that is come, it has been cleared by all the power centers. So at least that is the presumption on which we have to operate, and I think that presumption is probably correct because they have a system of collective decision making from the start, and I think this is maintained at the present moment. Well, both sides have to show that they are strong, that they're winning to their respective constituencies. So those kind of statements that emanate from both sides during a war, it's perfectly natural and to be expected that both sides will try to portray whatever their position is as being the dominant position or they are at an advantage. But the reality on the ground is that both sides need the peace. And both sides, in my view, would see a resumption of hostilities as a last option. So I think we have to work on that presumption in our mediatory efforts. We have to work on that presumption, and we have to see whatever the positions that are being conveyed to us from the two sides. We have to put our belief in the positions as they are conveyed to us as reflecting the actual position of the two parties. Well, I think it's a question of the capability to persuade a de-escalation. America, there is no major power which is trying to exert decisive pressure on the U.S. Its allies are kind of, spectators. Uh, Russia has offered to its mediatory efforts, but obviously they may not be seen to be credible. Although President Trump is well inclined towards Mr. Putin, but the establishment may not see those to be credible. The Chinese, in my view, will exert whatever influence they have through Iran. They will not ask the Americans for anything because they have larger issues to negotiate with the Americans on trade and other issues, where President Trump will be going to China and negotiating on those major issues of primary core interest to the Chinese. So this is for them not a core interest. I mean, they want to see the conflict ended. They want to see the Hormuz open. They want access to supplies, but they are not in a desperate situation. They have ample oil reserves. They have alternate energy. They have Russia, which is supplying them. The major source of their oil is Russia. Uh, China is not in a desperate position, and therefore it is not going to spend any of its cards on asking the US to do very much. They will gently exert some pressure on Iran because Iran is close to them, but I don't think they will expend any goodwill or value with the United States.